Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Natasha and I am from Calgary, Alberta. I have a fairly small family. I have one younger sister. My parents are immigrants from Fiji, and I am the first generation born and raised in Canada. My upbringing, it was fairly challenging. Being the firstborn child of immigrant parents meant that I had a lot of responsibility at a very young age, so I had to take care of my sister when my parents worked. We grew up in a really religious household. Like my father's family is Christian. They practice the Mormon faith. And my mother's family, most of them are Christian as well. My grandfather and my great uncle were Muslim, but they still live in Fiji, so I didn't really have a lot of contact with them. So, you know, going to church every Sunday was very common. We did a lot of religious activities. We had to go to activities at the church as well. Yeah, we celebrate Christmas, we celebrated Easter, all kinds of holidays. Identifying myself as a Christian, as a child, you're taught, you know, to believe in God and this is your religion. So my parents were very adamant in teaching us this and going to church and such. So we were involved, and as a child you don't really question what you know. You kind of just believe whatever it is your parents tell you. So I happily identified myself as a Christian, and in the Mormon faith, when you're 8 years old is when you get baptized into the church, because when you're 8 you have more of an ability to make a decision to say, yes, I want to be Mormon. So you know, I was happy to do it. Like, I love God and I love Jesus, and so I'm ready to get baptized. And you know, I was happily Christian, and in the community I grew up in, it was the main faith, right? I didn't grow up around any Muslims or anything like that. So it was my only real exposure to any type of religion, that was Christianity. And then when I was a teenager, so probably around the age of 17 or so, is when I really started to question my beliefs. And why do I believe that the Mormon faith is the right faith, or Christianity is the right faith, or do I believe in God? Why do I believe in God? Do I believe that Jesus was actually crucified? Like, all these questions started coming up. So I think at that point I decided that, you know, once I started researching and reading on my own and asking questions and not being able to get answers that were satisfactory or logical or made any kind of sense to me, is when I decided that, you know, Christianity may not be the right path for me. When we're youth in the church, we were required to attend seminary. And so that is from grade 9 to grade 12, you're required to attend an hour and a half before school of like pure Bible study. So I didn't really have a relationship with the Bible, but I did, alhamdulillah, get a chance to actually research and read it and try and understand what was going on. So you'd have a teacher, we'd have classrooms, and we'd have various books like the Old Testament, the New Testament, and then religious texts that Mormons have, and we would study them, kind of learn what they mean. So alhamdulillah, I did get the chance to really get guidance in that and studying the Bible. What I remember when I was about 6 or 7, my mom's uncle, when I've been to Fiji once and I was very young, but they would come and visit our family, and every time he went to go do salat, I would always go with him, and I was always drawn to, like, I want to just go, I want to see what he does when he prays. But it wasn't something that it was like, okay, when I get older I'm going to be Muslim. It was just something that I think I was drawn to. And I didn't really know anything about Islam. Like, my mom would celebrate Eid, but it was more of like a social activity. You have family over and you eat, but there was no real religious information. So unfortunately, what I got about Islam was from media, like everybody else, right? And it didn't really impact me in that it was a negative thing. I just assumed that all Arabs we're Muslim, you know? And I was wrong, of course, but that was what I thought. And I saw women wear hijab and I was just like, oh, you know, they wear hijab. Never really at that time thought anything of it. I was just like, oh, might kind of suck to not do your hair, but like I didn't really get it. So there wasn't a real like set, this is who Muslims are and this is what they believe. I didn't really have that knowledge. What piqued my interest in Islam? Islam was brought into my life at a time where I wasn't practicing any religion at all. I was actually very opposed to religion because I truly believed that it was everything that was wrong with what's going on in the world. And I just couldn't understand why we needed religion. Like, why can't we just have a spiritual relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Like, why can't we just focus on that? So I would always call myself, I'm a spiritual person. You know, I'm not religious. I don't believe in religion. I just, you know, I have my own personal relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's good enough for me. So after I left the Mormon church, I went through a very hard time in my life, a very dark period where you name it, I did it, and it was a very dark place for my soul. And when I was in my mid-20s is when Islam was brought into my life. And at that time, I was like, you know, I don't like religion, but, you know, why not? Let's just see what this is about. And I remember one day this individual asked if they could pray and like use my room to pray. And I was like, yeah, sure, but can I watch you pray? I was just curious about like, what is this? And I remember watching this person prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to this day, that image is seared in my brain. I can see it like it was yesterday. And this was like in 2008. And it was such a powerful image for me because there was this person taking out a portion of their day to prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and like in complete submission and just saying, I'm a mere servant and I'm praying to God, you know, for various reasons. And I think that's what really piqued my curiosity. And I was like, okay, you know, I know Christianity and I've never experienced or seen anything like this. And when I saw that, I'm like, this religion must be something really beautiful to make a person completely just submit to God in that way and take the time out of their busy day to pray. And so after that point, I was really interested. So I, you know, alhamdulillah, was able to get more information and do more research and kind of educate myself about what Islam was. And alhamdulillah, it was amazing because the more I read, the more I was like, oh, this is the same thing in Christianity. And I could, you know, Islam is the complete religion. And so it brought me a lot of peace to see that it actually is a complete religion because it's not anything new. It's a continuation from Christianity. So there was a lot of similarities for me, and it made it easier for me to kind of digest the information because it wasn't a foreign concept. I came across the Quran the year that I was first studying Islam, and it was something that I was just doing, but subhanAllah, my sister is actually the one who had a copy of it in the house, and I never knew it was there. And when I told her I was, you know, looking into it, she's like, yeah, I've been kind of, you know, reading, and she's like, I have a Quran if you want to see. And I was like, sure, like, I'm interested, right? So I took it, and I just, at that time, I didn't look through it as like to gain knowledge. It was more of just curiosity. I'm going to read this like a book and see what the similarities are and like what is this religion. So I was just able to kind of go through it and just read it, and that was my first exposure to Quran. SubhanAllah, like hijab was a very difficult concept for me, very difficult because modesty is not a foreign concept to me. Growing up, like, you know, I had to make sure that I was dressed modestly, but modesty in Christianity and modesty in Islam are different. And to me, although I understand, you know, like now I understand hijab is not just covering my head, it's my behavior as well, it's observing hijab. I didn't understand. All I saw back then was like women covering their head and wearing certain kinds of clothing, and I was like, this is oppressive to women, like they can't express themselves, and like they're being treated like less than, and like, why don't men have to wear hijab, and why don't they have to like wear a certain kind of clothing? Why is the onus only on the woman? So it was difficult. I just couldn't understand, you know, why is it so important to cover my hair? So I did a lot of research. Before I decided to put on hijab, I studied it for about a year. So I sought out sisters who wore hijab, and I did like mini interviews. I'm like, why do you wear it? How do you feel? What are your challenges? Like, what is this about? I asked people, you know, what is it that made you actually put on hijab? Like, what made you wake up that day and say, that's it, I'm wearing hijab from now on? And I got various answers, and some of them were, hair is part of women's beauty. And for me, I'm like, yes, absolutely. But it's still not a good enough answer for me. And I think the best answer I got was from a sister who said, it is your submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, you're being told that you should wear hijab, and that's why you wear hijab. And I don't know why, for me, I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. And also, you know, for me, wearing hijab identifies myself to other people as a Muslim woman. So I find that before I wear hijab and after I wear hijab, people are more respectful around me, and the way they talk and the way they carry themselves and what they do and what they say and the language that they use, which I really do appreciate. But for me, I don't think it was a journey for sure. I didn't think that I would ever be a sister who wore hijab, like, in a million years. Like, I was like, well, maybe after I'm married and have kids, because I would want my daughter to wear hijab, but, you know, how can I say my daughter to wear hijab, but when I don't observe it myself? And so I started practicing wearing hijab in my house, and it was like, okay, you know, you kind of get to see yourself in hijab, and you're like, okay, this is different. And then you practice and practice. I watched a bunch of videos, and I talked to a bunch of friends, and I remember it was March of last year. I went to an orientation for school, and I remember sitting in the classroom, and there was, you know, men and women mixed, and I remember sitting there, and I was dressed modestly. There was nothing, you know. And I remember sitting there, and I could feel a certain individual staring, and it made me feel so uncomfortable. And in my head, I was like, man, I cannot wait to wear hijab. And that's when I knew I was ready to wear it. But I didn't put it on. I had to, you know, break it to my mother and say, you know, this is what I want to do. I want to wear hijab, which is a very difficult concept for her to this day. And tell my friends, and, you know, make adjustments to my wardrobe. And I decided this was my first Muharram, even though I've been a revert for about 5 years. October last year was my first Muharram, and I would go to the mosque, and they would have Arabic lectures, and I'd come home and I'd watch on YouTube. I'd watch English lectures, and I was watching one by Shaykh Usama, and the topic was not related to hijab. And I remember sitting there and I was thinking, okay, when am I going to put it on? When am I going to put it on? And subhanAllah, in that lecture, he mentioned hijab twice. And I was like, okay, you know, tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to put it on. And that was it. Alhamdulillah, I put it on. And now I understand, on the other side, hijab, women who wear hijab, it takes an incredible amount of strength in a Western society to stand up for what you believe in, and, you know, fight for your right as women to not be oppressed. Hijab is quite the opposite of oppression for me. It's liberation for women. So it's amazing how it changed from, I feel like these women are so oppressed and they can't express themselves, to now, like, I can't imagine leaving my house without hijab, because it's more liberating for me to be taken as a human being than as, you know, just another woman who might look good that day. It's so crazy after I put on hijab, because instantly I felt more like a woman. It's like, subhanAllah, like, I put on hijab and I left my house and I was like, oh, I feel so much like more beautiful, and I feel so protected and safe. And like, for me, Hijab is very difficult because I lost friends because of hijab, and my relationship with my mother changed because of hijab. But like, it makes me feel so close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a constant reminder for me, you know, this is what I'm here for and this is what I'm about. And I'm not somebody to be looked at or to be objectified. I'm an intelligent human being who deserves to be taken as like a serious person. And so it's not just putting a scarf on my head every day and leaving for school. It's, you know, my behavior and how I conduct myself with other people and how I respect other people. Because ultimately, whether we like it or not, women who wear hijab, we're the face of Islam. And it is a lot of responsibility, but alhamdulillah, it's a blessing because it forces us to be better people, to be better women, to obtain knowledge and seek it out, because, you know, people are going to ask you, why do you wear that cloth on your head? And I love telling people, hijab is not just a scarf. It's not. It's behavior. It's your akhlaq. It's your inner person. It's who you are, is hijab, not just this covering. This is just a part of it, a part of the physical part of hijab. So when I decided to revert, I had decided ahead of time, before I actually did the reversion, that I was going to revert. It was difficult for me because I don't have support. My family is very Christian, and so the information that they have is, unfortunately, they have misinformation, only what they've seen. And so when I decided to revert, it was a very spiritual experience for me. It was very beautiful for me. And the only people I told were a few friends, my mother and my sister. And alhamdulillah, like, my mom and my sister were very, very supportive of me converting or reverting to Islam. They were very supportive. So it wasn't a big deal, but unfortunately I haven't been able to tell my father or my grandparents or my aunts and uncles because there's such a negative stereotype in my family about the religion. So I've chosen to give it some more time and introduce certain things. So like, my father would know when I was fasting for Ramadan, but it wasn't kind of like, Dad, I'm Muslim now, right? So when I engage in dialogue with my parents about religion, I will purposely try and bring up things about Islam. And I told my dad at one point, I'm studying Islam. So inshallah, one day I'll have the courage to be able to be completely, like, this is who I am. But it's very difficult because I don't want to cause family problems between my parents or anybody else, or, you know, have any of my other extended family say anything bad to my parents because of a choice I've made. So it's not really common knowledge with everyone except for my mom and my sister. My mom was very supportive of everything except for hijab, and alhamdulillah, she's come around in that. She says she doesn't agree with it, but, you know, she's not embarrassed to be seen with me. So that's, for me, is good enough. I can understand where she's coming from. Yeah. I think the hardest thing for me about being a Muslim was the social aspect of it, especially when I put on hijab, because you can no longer participate in activities before you thought were okay. So you can't go to certain places and you can't participate in certain events. Like, for example, one of my friends, like a friend I had for 20 years, she had a child and had a baby shower for her child, which had, like, she had a party at her house, but they had alcohol. So I couldn't go, and explaining that caused a rift in our friendship, right? So that was difficult for me, but not going to certain, like, movies or listening to music in my car anymore. Just these little habits that I formed throughout, you know, throughout many years, being more conscious of it. But alhamdulillah, like, it's been an okay adjustment, right? Because you have to keep in mind the bigger picture of, like, this is all for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of the day. So I can stop listening to music. It's, how can I stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on, like, Judgment Day and be like, no, I had to listen to this song? Like, it's just such a minor thing at that point in time. So, you know, I had some problems with the social aspect, but you learn to make new friends, and you learn to, you know, you go to the mosque more and you socialize there, and you start hanging out with people who are more like-minded, and you extend, you know, yourself out, and you make yourself vulnerable to people who have the same faith, even though it's difficult because it's foreign territory, right? So I think that was probably the most challenging for me. And sometimes, you know, hijab obviously is challenging. It's not that I care about my hair, it's just being in public, and especially when I have to go out alone, I get scared sometimes, you know, especially with some of the reaction that some women meet, and that can be challenging. But alhamdulillah, so far, you know, I've been just kind of trucking along. My first year after reversion, I'm pretty ashamed of. Like, after I reverted, I didn't do anything really. Like, I did fast for Ramadan, and I read Quran during Ramadan, but that was the extent of me practicing my faith. And for me, like, I've had a difficult upbringing, so I've had a rocky relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for me, it wasn't like as simple as I've reverted now and I can do everything like I'm supposed to do. It was a process for me, because at the core of it, I had to make sure that I had a healthy relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that would help me practice my religion the way I'm supposed to. And that took a lot of time for me, because I had a lot of things to work through. And so it wasn't good. I didn't go to lectures, and I didn't attend any like Muslim events. I didn't reach out to any other sisters. Like, I was still pretty much living my Western lifestyle, but I would fast, and I wasn't like doing anything else. But I would just, you know, I wasn't praying, and I wasn't being good. 2 years ago, summer of 2014, during Ramadan that year, a very difficult time in my life, and I was sitting there and just having a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm like, what should I do? Like, what do I need to do here to get my life in a better way? And instantly in my head, start your salah, start praying. And that day I started praying. And so I just learned how to pray. And, you know, like, alhamdulillah, it was really easy, because I don't speak Arabic. And so I was able to learn how to pray and which surahs to read during prayer within like a week. So now it's just like, if I don't pray, I'm like, something's missing. You know, it's not a question of should I go pray. It's like, no, I have to go pray right now, kind of thing. But now it's like, when you get to this place where you want to be a better Muslim, you get involved in your community. Like, I try and attend every single English lecture that I can go to, and if I know somebody that I know from the community is going to be there, like a sister who can translate for me in Arabic when they have Arabic lectures, I'll go. Alhamdulillah, I've had the opportunity, like, I get to teach at the Islamic school on Saturdays, so I get to teach Quran to 5-year-olds, and like religion to, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. So that helps me with my faith, because it teaches me as I'm teaching children. So getting involved has been a big part of me trying to become a better Muslim, because it keeps me aware, and it kind of reaffirms my knowledge as well. So when I first reverted, I couldn't understand the different, like, the sects of Islam. I'm like, I'm just Muslim, and I'm not going to follow a particular school of thought or path, because I don't get it. Like, what's the point? And I heard about the Ahlul Bayt, and I got like tidbits of information, but it wasn't something that I was really looking for or saying, okay, I'm going to study these individuals now. Last Muharram, like in October, I decided that I'm going to go to the mosque for every day that they have lectures, even if I can't understand. And so I went, and it was such an interesting experience, because, you know, I saw these women, they were dressed in black, and they were mourning, and I wasn't shocked, it was just interesting. And I'm like, okay, like, what is this about? So I went home and I YouTubed it. And I found this play that they put on about Karbala, and I fell in love with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Like, I was just like, what an incredible individual. And that piqued my interest into the Ahlul Bayt. And that was kind of the moment where I'm like, I'm Shia. Like, this is like the path. This is the school of thought that I want to follow, because if I want to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I want to live my religion the way I should be, if I want to, like Imam Hussein alayhi salam, like died and sacrificed to keep Islam preserved, you know? And so if I want to follow if I want to follow true Islam, and if I want to attain this spirituality, then who else better to look at than these incredible individuals who, you know, just had such incredible characteristics that I probably will never attain in my life, but it's something to aspire to, because, you know, in our society, there's not very many people that you can look at and say, you know, they have admirable qualities, and that's something that I want to inherit in myself. But you look at these 5 individuals and you think, subhanAllah, like, if I could have like 1/10 of the patience, 1/10 of the integrity, 1/10 of the love, like, you know, that would be so incredible for me. I think we're doing a good job in letting others know about Islam in terms of creating awareness and answering questions, and, like, you know, we're holding events like World Hijab Day, or like these marches for Imam Hussein alayhi salam or whatever. But I think that as Muslims, it's very important for us to display Islam through our behavior. Unfortunately, I've seen various events and things where tempers and anger rises, and we meet adversity with hostility. And it's unfortunate because we're just fueling that fire. You know, we're being told Muslims are, you know, violent and angry, and they do these things that are really bad, and then instead of trying to have patience and kindness and control our emotions when answering these questions, and, like, I'm not saying I don't, because it's difficult when you feel so in love with your religion to have to defend it against someone who's saying all these horrible things. But I think it's really important for Muslims to really meet these hostile comments with as much calmness and kindness as we can, because we can't just say we're Muslim. We have to behave like Muslims. We have to behave in the way that shows. You can't just say Islam is a religion of peace and then swear at somebody when they say something bad. You know, it doesn't make sense. Instead, it's really difficult. This is where controlling your temper and controlling your anger and, like, your emotions comes into play, because you have to somehow be able to say, you know, show that it's a religion of peace. And I mean, alhamdulillah, like, I've been fortunate, and I wouldn't know how I would react in a situation like that, because it's absolutely different when you're in the moment. But to be aware of our emotions and to try and, you know, show Islam's peaceful, I think is a very important thing to do, especially now with all the crazy things that are happening in our communities. Alhamdulillah, I've had the opportunity to be part of, like, events. Like, we had a hot chocolate event at the university for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, where I had to hand out hot chocolate to people and be like, hey, you want some hot chocolate? Do you know anything about Islam, right? And it was so scary for me because I've never done anything like that before. But at the same time, it was such a blessing. Like, alhamdulillah, like, the people that I was talking to, they were very open. And I was so surprised, and, like, it was just such a humble experience, because people would be like, yeah, what I've seen on TV obviously isn't true. What is it about? So I had the opportunity not only to tell them about Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but to also be like, this is what Islam is about. This is what we believe, and this is how it relates to your religion. You know, so people humanize Muslims. We're no longer just women in hijabs or people, like, that they see on the media, but we're human beings who have very similar beliefs to your faith. And then, like, we also did an Imam Hussein march, and I was an outreach person, so I had to walk along the street and, you know, give out roses to people and be like, hi, this is what we're doing, and this is what this is about. And the response was just beautiful. Like, these people would be like, wow, what a brave man, and, like, Islam, of course, like, we don't believe what we see on media. So it was very refreshing to see people say, yeah, the media filters information, absolutely. And I've done my own research. Like I had one woman that I went up to and was like, do you know anything about Imam Hussein and Karbala? And she's like, yeah, I actually just read about it the other day. And I was like, subhanAllah, really? And so we were able to have this conversation, and she already had this knowledge and like just so open to the information. And then, you know, I took a women's studies class, and my professor and I kind of formed a relationship, and she asked me to come and talk to her class about hijab. So alhamdulillah, like I got to come in. It was a group of women in a circle, and it was, you know, what is hijab? And so I got to hear a lot of the common misconceptions, like Muslim women are weak and they're submissive by nature and they don't have a choice. And it was really nice to sit there and be like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like I had the exact same point of views, but here's what it actually is about. So, you know, doing these types of events and participating in discussions, I think really opens the door for people to ask us questions. And I think our communities are doing a good job in being open. You know, we're not closed and saying, no, don't ask us questions ever. Like we're open to saying, okay, yeah, you have a question about hijab? Sure, ask me. If you have a question about why we fast? Sure, ask me. We're having this event. Why don't you come on by and kind of see like what we're about? So we're doing a good job in that respect, yes. Interfaith discussions are really crucial at this point in time because I feel like we're being pitted against each other when we have the same end goal. So I think if we open up these conversations and these dialogues between faiths, we can see how we all have the same objective in life, and it would create a more peaceful environment for us to coexist with each other. And I don't really know if we're doing a good job or a bad job. Like, you know, it's hard to say, because I think when we extend the offer to our Christian brothers and sisters or our Jewish brothers and sisters or any other denomination to say this is what Islam's about, I think there is a level of respect. And so people will come and they'll listen, but it's hard to really say what kind of impact you've had on them or if they really understand, because some people are embarrassed to ask questions, right? They just want to be there and be like, okay, yeah, like, let's have this discussion. But it's good to like have non-emotional discussions about it, because then you can learn from each other and inshallah, like, you know, unite and move forward instead of being opposing forces and creating, you know, animosity between these different faiths. And this is not just like for me also, I think this needs to also extend within the Muslim community. It's important to have these conversations with like our Sunni brothers and sisters, right? Because as Muslims, we need to unite as well. Because if we have, you know, so much disharmony in our ummah, like in our community, like how can we actually expect to change the world, expect to spread Islam in a positive way? My advice for individuals who are either reverting to Islam or thinking about reverting to Islam is to take it slow. Islam is such a big religion and it's got such a wealth of information, and it's so easy to get overwhelmed or put pressure on yourself to be this perfect Muslim right away. But it's a spiritual journey, and so I think being patient with yourself and allowing yourself to really, you know, seek out the information, learn it and digest it, and then decide how you're going to implement it into your life. But it's okay to take it one step at a time. It's okay to learn it one step at a time. And like, inshallah, like you'll have lots of time on earth to kind of develop your knowledge. But I think it's such a common thing to, like, I know for myself, like you learn all this information and you overwhelm yourself with it and you want to be this perfect Muslim, so you do everything you possibly can and you burn out. And you have this opposite like effect where you're like, I don't want to do anything anymore. And that's kind of the road that you want to avoid going down. So, you know, taking like the basic things like salat, just start with prayer. Don't worry about doing any of the extra things, but just start with the foundations. And if you can get like your foundations rooted, then the other things come a little bit easier. It's easier to implement things because it truly is like a lifestyle change. You know, Islam is a way of life. It's not a passive religion where you just do it once a week or on special holidays. Like, you live it, you breathe it. It is your life. It's part of your core. So, you know, take it easy and don't be embarrassed to ask questions. Questions are the best way to learn. So, you know, there's no shame in asking questions, no matter how dumb you think they are. Like, I have been so fortunate to have people surround me that have been like, that's not a dumb question. Like, that's a great question. Like, this is what it is, and provide me with the information that I need to kind of further my knowledge. But it's okay to ask questions. There's no shame in it. And also to find a support system, especially for reverts who come from Canadian families or families who don't have religious backgrounds or Christianity as their background, because you're going to need a very strong support system, because it is a difficult journey and it takes a lot of strength to kind of get through each single day, and, you know, take one day at a time as well, but it does take a lot. And so to have, you know, people on the outside, whether it's at your mosque or friends at school who are Muslim as well, you need to have a really strong support. So aside from taking it one step at a time, go make friends. You know, go find your Muslim friends who can guide you and direct you towards, you know, this is how you can find literature that is, you know, authenticated, and it is something that is true. Like, instead of, there's so much information on the internet that's not right, you know. So having that support helps keep you strong in your iman. It helps you on the days when you just don't know if you can do this anymore, and it helps keeps reminding you, like, you know, why am I here? Why did I revert? Why did I revert in the first place? Because it's difficult. I'm not going to say it's not. It's difficult, but it's so worth it. You know, it's been such a challenging time for me over these last few years, but alhamdulillah, like, I can't say that I regret any of the things, because this has brought me so close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's made me, like, I'm the type of person who needs to be like shoved into something because I get comfortable, and that's what happened. And I was like, alhamdulillah, I was shoved into it, and it was just, it's beautiful. Like, I'm so grateful for it, because it's changed my life in ways that I can't put into words. I can only say that I know when I fast and when I do salah, when I make dua, when I put on my hijab, like, all these things bring me so much peace that the difficulty and the pain is kind of like an afterthought. You know, you think, yeah, it hurts and it's difficult with my family and my friends and my lifestyle, and I don't have support all the time, but I have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I have Islam, which is such a beautiful religion, and it's worth it. You know, it's hard, but it's worth it. And just keep on going. Just, even on the days you don't think you can, just get into prayer. Like, there's a saying by Imam Ali alayhi salam, is, when the world knocks you down on your knees, you're in the perfect position to pray. And I love that, because as a revert, it can be very difficult to continue going on, especially when you're alone and you're aware of everything that's going on in the world. Because once you revert and you see life in the world as it is, you kind of realize, you realize that we live in such a difficult world, and we live in such a difficult time, and it hurts. It's a very saddening thing, and so all you have is prayer. And so you just have to take it slowly, and inshallah, you know, get through it.